afternoon. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is hereby called to order for its regularly scheduled meeting of April 24th, 2024. My name is Tim Rainey. I'm chairman of the board. Mr. Jeffrey Penzis serves as secretary of the board. Mr. Penzis, may I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Foster.
Here.
Mr. Bruce.
Present.
Mr. Campbell.
Present.
Mr. Claybrook.
Here.
Ms. Scurlock. Vice Chair Savage Selden.
Present.
Chair Rainey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is the oldest appointed governmental body in Memphis and Shelby County. We were established in 1925. The board hears appeals from the administration of the zoning ordinance, requests for variances from the zoning ordinance, and other requests as articulated by local zoning laws adopted pursuant to the enabling legislation. The 8 members of the board are appointed, 4 by the mayor of Memphis and 4 by the mayor of Shelby County, with confirmation by the Memphis City Council or Shelby County Board of Commissioners. We serve without remuneration. At this time, I'd like to swear in the staff. May remain seated. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, thank you. May I get a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting?
So move.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Mr. Secretary, if you could provide us a secretary's report if we have one this month, and then explain the procedure for today's meeting.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As for the Secretary's report, there are no announcements this afternoon. The procedure for this meeting will be as follows. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies of the agenda can be found on the front podium. For each case, the planner with the Division of Plan Development will give a presentation. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present his or her case. After the applicant's presentation, those speakers in support will have a total of 5 minutes. Then those speakers in opposition will have a total of 10 minutes. And then finally, the applicant will have 2 minutes to provide rebuttal. These times do not include time for questions from and answers to members of the board. The chairman may provide additional time, provided both sides are given an equal amount of additional time. All parties who wish to provide testimony to the board will be sworn in by the chairman. If a member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a particular case on today's agenda, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card for the record. Speaker's cards are available at the front podium. Once filled out, speaker's cards can be submitted to any DPD staff member at the left podium. We do not need speaker's cards from the applicant since their names are already part of the record. After all parties have been heard, the board will close the public hearing, make a motion, and then deliberate on the case. If the applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing, or if a board member wishes to hear additional testimony from any party, a 2/3 vote is required to reopen the public hearing pursuant to the board's rules of procedure. Please note that once the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and opposition will be allowed to provide additional testimony and or rebuttal. All motions by this board will be made in the affirmative. The private acts governing the board require the affirmative vote of at least 5 members to approve an application regardless of the number of board members present. The board may also vote to hold an application for a period not to exceed 3 months with the consent of the applicant or 1 month without the consent of the applicant. All section numbers that we refer to come from the Memphis and Shelby County Unified Development Code, or the UDC, which was adopted by the Memphis City Council and Shelby County Board of Commissioners in August of 2010 and became effective on January 1st, 2011. I will introduce the entire UDC and make it part of today's record, thus dispensing with the reading of individual sections. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases before us today under the provisions of Chapter 9.22 of the UDC. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all notice requirements have been fulfilled as required by the UDC.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, the board will establish the consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the Secretary will call out each eligible case If any member of the audience, staff, or board member objects to a case being placed on the consent agenda, he or she should make their objection known by a show of hands when the secretary reads that case. Once the consent agenda is established, the board will vote on all cases placed on the consent agenda as a whole and will not hold individual public hearings on those cases. Mr. Secretary, which items on our agenda are eligible to be placed on consent this month?
Item number 1, BOA 2024-0011, located at 5059 Crescent Street. Item number 2, BOA 2024-0012, located at 3909 Knight Arnold Road. Item number 3, BOA 2024-0016 at 3010 Huntington Trail Drive as a 1-month hold. Item number 4, BOA 2024-0017 at 584 Jeanette Place. Item number 6, BOA 2024-0021 at 4 South Hume Street as a 1-month hold. Item number 8, BOA 2024-0028 at 1661 Patton Street. Item number 9, BOA 2024-0030 at 3427 Tally Ho Road as a 1-month hold. Item number 10, BOA 2024-0031 at 786 East Brookhaven Circle. Item number 11, BOA 2024-0032 at 5485 Summer Avenue as a 1-month hold. Item number 12, BOA 2024-0033 at 4055 Poplar Avenue. Item number 13, BOA 2020, actually no, not item 13. Item 14, BOA 2024-0036 at 1869 North Pisgah Road. And item number 15, BOA 2024-0037 at 5191 Brunswick Road and 8810 Chapin Road.
Okay, thank you very much. If we could get a motion to approve on the consent agenda, items number 1, 2, 3 as a hold, 4 is conditioned by staff, 6 as a hold, 8 is conditioned by staff, 9 as a hold, 10 as conditioned by staff, 11 as a hold, and 12, 14, and 15 as conditioned by staff.
So moved. Second.
I want to remind everyone that on the board, by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he or she has read the staff report as in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, may I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Baker.
Yes.
Ms. Bostic.
Yes.
Mr. Bruce.
Yes.
Mr. Gamble.
You say Campbell?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Claybrook.
Yes.
Ms. Scurlock.
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Selden.
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Chair Raymond.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, motion passes. So if you're here for those cases that we just put on the consent agenda, you've ever been approved or held as requested. And so looks like the only cases we're hearing are 5, 7, and 13. Mr. Secretary, if you'll call the first case we're going to have a hearing on, please.
Item number 5, BOA 2024-0018 at 2161 Monroe Avenue.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Perfect. And then we have some opposition. All right, so everybody that's going to talk, you'll just kind of come down to the front. You're pretty close already. Thank you. And then Ms. Cobbs, when you're ready, if you'll give us a staff report on this one. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Kendra Cobbs, Division of Planning and Development. So this is a variance request for 2161 Monroe Avenue, and the request is to allow more than one accessory dwelling unit on this particular lot, and also to allow the accessory dwelling unit or ADUs to exceed the maximum size or the minimum size. And this is located in Midtown, and looking at the vicinity map, this is where the 60 notices were sent to the property owners in the area. This is zoned residential urban 1, and it is within the Midtown overlay. Also want to point out that the subject property is zoned RU1, but we do have CMU3 zoning here to the south, and then also CMU3 zoning that comes around to South Cooper Street to the west. Looking at the land use map, the particular property is a single-family residential land use, and there is single-family residential surrounding, but there's also multifamily and office uses, and then to the immediate south of the subject property, there's also office land uses. So looking at an aerial of the site, this is an L-shaped lot, and it is, as I've already stated, surrounded by single family. Actually, the property to the west, the immediate west, is a duplex, and then 2 properties over, as you're getting to South Cooper Street, those are office uses or office type uses, commercial uses. Looking at photos of the site, we do have the single-family residential structure to the left on Monroe Avenue, and this is a view of South Cooper Street, but the reason why this picture is in here is the alley that the proposed ADUs would front. So here are additional pictures. The picture to the left is an actual picture on site. So that is the view that one of the ADUs would have. That is Playhouse on the Square property. And then also another view on site and from the alley, looking to the east. And the picture to the left shows another on-site view that the second ADU actually would have of Playhouse on the Square. And then this is to the right, that's a picture off of the alley. That's a property that backs up to the alley. Looks like it's being used as a parking lot. It is fenced. I wasn't quite sure the purpose, but that's just a view of what you can anticipate off of the alley. So what is proposed for the ADUs, the site plan, they would be two-story structures. So the ground floor would consist of the garage. There are also in between the 2 ADUs, the applicant has provided 2 off-street parking spaces. And then to the rear of the garage, you have patio space. And then looking at the upper story level, there would be the living space. I believe that would be 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. And so we also have elevations of the proposed ADUs and a rendering of how they would look. So this request is consistent with our Memphis 3.0 plan. The future land use designation is anchor neighborhood mix of building types. And so because this would provide diversity in housing, and also because of the area being a walkable area where you already have such a mixture of uses and housing, it is found to be consistent with our future land use map and plan. So just to reiterate, this is an L-shaped lot, 10,839 square feet. Currently, there is a two-story single-family home on the site, and the proposed would be 2 ADUs to the rear of the lot, and they actually would have their access off of the alley, as shown in the pictures. This is also within the Midtown overlay, zoned RU1. However, we do have directly to the south commercial properties, and Playhouse on the Square, as I've pointed out, is an immediate structure that is to the south, and actually that would be the viewpoint from the ADUs. So staff is recommending approval of this request. Just two conditions: any change from the site plan. We would ask that it come back to the Board of Adjustment or be approved administratively. Also, there are proposed fencing, or there is proposed fencing that we would have to determine that it would meet the code. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Ms. Cobbs?
Yes, I have a question. Ms. Cobbs, you have presented this as a single-family dwelling and a request for additional ADUs and so on. But the information that I've seen is that this is not a single-family dwelling, that it's a triplex, which doesn't allow an ADU at all. And so my question to you is, I'm just looking for, I know you were probably going by the application, you know, but do you have any information beyond that, that this is in fact a single-family dwelling and not a triplex?
I will let the applicant speak more to that, but based on my research and the questions that I have asked, it would be used as a single-family residence.
Okay. One other question. That L shape, that bottom section that's tagged on there, making it the L shape, which I believe is the hardship stated in the report. Do you know when that property was tagged on to this lot, quit claimed from the property next door?
I do not know the exact date, but I do know at on page 3 of the staff report, there is a subdivision of this area. And so initially the lot that you're referring to, it was, or the subject property was not an L-shaped lot. And so at some point, the property to the immediate west sold the rear portion of their property to the subject property owner, and that created the L-shaped lot.
Right.
So
okay.
I don't know the exact date, but I do know that would have been what had occurred.
I think it was November of 2023, but we'll go forward and check on that, and I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Ms. Cobbs? Okay, the applicant would like to come forward. The applicant, yeah, sorry.
Hi, I'm Todd Walker. I'm the architect for this project with Archimania. My address is 2178 Monroe Avenue, so I also live on this street.
Okay, let me swear you in real quick.
I'm sorry.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and speak with us about this.
Yeah, so just to follow up on what Ms. Cobb said, I mean, I feel like, you know, we're doing just what Memphis 3.0 wants us to do. And I understand that some people don't like too much density and some people don't like the things that come out of that. But we're a big believer in what Memphis 3.0 does. And so the couple of variances that we're asking for on this project, I just want to be sort of clear that we could build an ADU on this site. So what we're asking for is a little bit more square footage to have a 2-bedroom unit. We believe that, again, in the spirit of Memphis 3.0, that this encourages affordability. And of course, this will make this more affordable to the renter. We believe also that it will help make this alley more safe and activate it at a pretty high level. So just to speak, Ms. Baker, to what you were asking, this was a triplex or a 3-unit rental at one time. There had been a renter in there for at least a year prior to this, and it had been vacant for, I don't know, several months, 4 or 5 months before the owner bought this property. As far as the lot next door, or the parking area that was subdivided, so there were a lot of lots that were either subdivided or used for parking for Playhouse when there was a need. At some point, Playhouse no longer had that need for parking. So you can see even on some of the photos, there are just numbers on the fences where people parked in those vacant lots. Evidently, this one particular lot was subdivided, and I can tell you that it's been longer than 2023 because, you know, I've purchased that property. I've been in it for 2 years, so I had it for 2 years prior. It was like that long before I started looking at it. So I don't know what the timeline is, but it's been some time. My guess would be over 10 years, but I don't know that answer.
Can I ask another question? The pictures that I've seen show that there are 3 kitchens, and each one of them, you know, has at least a bedroom and a bathroom that goes with it. Are those still there?
No, so the plan, unfortunately, the second floor plan didn't come up for some reason, but we have a 2-car garage. So again, what we believe is with 2 bedrooms and a 2-car garage that we take care of all the parking that we need. We also have a guest parking for each unit, so a total of 6 parking spaces, including 4 in garages. There's a second floor, so if you see the stairs in the far right-hand corner of that lower plan, you come into a little stair lobby, you go up the stairs, and there's basically a living room, a dining room, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom.
Okay, but I was actually, and I appreciate it very much. I was asking you really, though, about the property, the building that this is supposedly accessory to.
Oh, on the existing house.
Does it still have 3 bathrooms and, 3 kitchens? And
the existing house, all of the triplex has been gutted. I mean, literally, there's a building permit that they're working under now, and it's all been gutted. Electrical work is being done, and it's also a 2-bedroom. So on the lower floor of that existing house, it's a living, dining, kitchen, laundry room, and bathroom. And then on the upper floor, there are 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms.
Are you saying it is now a single-family dwelling and it has lost the ability to be a triplex? Or even a duplex, because even a duplex, you can't have an accessory dwelling
unit.
unit.
This is a single family, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Did you have anything else you wanted to add, or do you just want to save time for rebuttal, or?
I'll save time for rebuttal. I mean, I think that Ms. Cobbs has done a great job sort of looking at all this context and understanding how this fits in this context. And so I'll leave it at the report for now.
Okay, we got about 6 minutes added to your time for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to move to the opposition. So I have 2 cards here. The first one I got from George Collier, but I also have one from Shannon Toon. Do y'all have an idea of who wants to speak first? Okay, very gracious of you. All right, Mr. Collier, if you can give your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
Yes, sir. My name is George Collier. I live at 2183 Monroe Avenue.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Is there a certain, we have 10 minutes. Is there a certain time you want me to tell you, hey, it's been, people sometimes think they've talked for 2 minutes and they've talked for 10 minutes. Do you have a time limit you want me to put on that?
You might want to cut me off at about 8.
Okay.
So he can get a chance.
Okay, we'll let you know. Yeah.
So I also want to tell you, I've been on this block for 30 years. I can tell you, I can answer every question you have about how that became an L-shaped lot, but I don't want to cut into my time. I can tell you the whole history.
Go ahead and give us what you got, and if she wants to ask some questions about that, she can.
The property originally was owned by a gentleman named George Whitmer. He's the one that created the duplex. He also owned 2157 Monroe. The duplex is right next to it, the one that's got the half yard where the L shape was created. Okay, what he did was, when Shawnee South was first, before Playhouse, he took that lot, took limestone, dumped it down, put a fence up, and put all these numbers up, and he was charging Shawnee South to park there. So then I moved in, along with other people starting to refurbish the neighborhood. Playhouse starts to come in, put in millions of dollars, and what he did was Miss Greta Cooper, who owns 2157 Monroe, was a tenant of his. She desperately loved the street and wanted to live there. She wanted to buy the house. She lived on one side, fixed it up, and switched it over so she could get passive income. The previous owner that they purchased this from, what he did was he said, I'm not going to sell you this house, and unfortunately Greta's not here, she's out of town. I will not sell you this house unless you allow me to cut half your backyard off and quick deed it over so I can have my L shape, so I can then charge Playhouse on the square to put in a commercial parking lot. And guess what? It wasn't zoned that way. We were starting to stop all this extra eating away at the neighborhood. It never happened, and it lay dormant. That's how it became an L shape. So anyway, now
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and get started. So my understanding is the reason we're here is this is a hardship. This is not, I think a hardship would normally be someone that owns a piece of property and they want to add an AEDU or whatever, and you've got, I can't do it because of this and that and the other. This is an LLC. This is not an individual. It's an LLC that's come in, bought this property with eyes wide open in less than 2 months. They say it's a hardship. We can't develop the property the way we want it. In other words, they can't make as much profit off of it. So let's just start with, I've done sort of this before, and I know that you guys are all volunteers and all of you know each other and you all work with each other. I don't get to play in the sandbox very much, so the only thing I can do is read. So what I've done is read the ordinances. And they are asking for variances on 3 major items. I count 10. I also want to note that I was glad to see that Professor Steve Reed, I don't know if you guys got the letter, he sent it on the 22nd. He is a consultant for Memphis and Shelby County Planning, helped develop all this stuff. I don't know if you had a chance to read the letter, but he sent in opposition to this and listed all these, except for the most important one that I'm going to get to last. But let's start with 2.7.1, or 2.7, and just go through all of them. You have 2.71A, 2.71C, D, and E, and 2.72.D5, which what they're all is talking about is ADUs, the buildings, and how they're supposed to be compatible and how they're supposed to flow with the property. We all know the spirit of this was to create denser dwellings. These are pencil lots. They're little narrow things. Most of them aren't even 10,000 square feet. This one happens to be that way because it's an L shape. So we're only supposed to allow for one structure. But the first with all these, it states in every one of these codes, and basically where it comes down to is that the accessory structure shall be clearly indicated and subordinate to the primary. It also states that the accessory dwelling shall be architecturally and consistent with the principal structure. The principal structure is a 2-floor, 4-square that was built in 1908 with a front porch that runs along the front of it with asphalt shingles. That is not even close. I mean, I don't want to be tacky, but they sort of look like storage units. It does not look like a turn of last century building. How does that fit at all? It doesn't. So we'll just skip on down to 2.7.2 accessory structures. You're only allowed to have one ADU per lot. Their argument is we want to put 2. And the argument is, well, it's because the other person next to us, 2157, because their backyard was cut off from the previous owner. They'd have probably put one up anyway. So we want to use that spot, so we need 2. Well, so now here's another one of this is in stone, supposedly, zoning laws that you have. And we're just gonna throw that one out also. Now you come down to 2.72D1B. An AUD cannot exceed 700 square feet. We're up to 950 square feet per unit. And that's just the upstairs. Don't tell me you can't shut down the downstairs. And don't tell me you can say, well, we're going to keep it from parking. No, you're not. You got a whole parking lot behind you. You just use playhouses if they wanted to. I'm not saying they are, but you're already taking and adding a third to the law says it cannot exceed 700 square feet, period. And we're going for 950, twice. So there's another total violation, or I don't know what you call that. These are, quote, adjustments. These are major. This isn't like I need to move my fence a foot, or can I have 715 square feet? No, I need 950 twice. Then we have 3.2.9F2. Well, this is a big one, because now we're going to front load the alley. It says absolutely no setback encroachments. That's the law, or that's what the code says. This is another one that they're asking for, a variance. When I built my little two-car carport, 20 by 20 little bitty thing, I had to set mine back starting 16 feet in my property because you have the easement, the utility easement. Then I had to go back. I don't know, but that's what I had to do. They're wanting to put these things right on the line, 5 feet off the line. So they're literally putting these things right along the easement. There's 31,000 volts right over the top of these metal structures. I wouldn't want to live there, but that's not me. You also have 3.3.1B, and this is where Mr. Reed in his letter didn't mention this. And this is huge. This is the whole thing. You can do all the other adjustments you want, and you can tweak this and you can tweak that, and you go, yeah, let's give them 950 square feet. Oh, let's just let it look like a storage unit. It doesn't look anything like turn of last century home. Yeah, we don't have to worry about that. But this one is gigantic. An alley or rear private drive may not constitute frontage, period. So now you're going to turn an alley into an alley street, and now they're afforded the same rights, I don't know what you call it rights, but the same privileges as a front-loaded street. That changes the whole complexity of everything. You know why it changes the complexity of everything? Because the next person that goes to sell a house, we got to worry about the next LLC coming in and buying the property and going, oh, I'm going to put one back there. And don't think these are for a mother-in-law wing. These are not for mother-in-law wings, or an aged parent, or an au pair going to Rhodes, and it's like a cottage house. I don't know what they're going to use them for, but I'm guessing event homes or Airbnbs, because it doesn't make any sense to do this and cram this stuff on this little piece of property. This is totally out of the spirit of what the Unified Code was built for. And the final one, and I'll tell you a little thing. Back, I don't know if any of you guys were on the board, I guess probably not, but I'm going to say approximately 5 years ago, we called them the big tall skinnies. Jefferson and Cooper put these monsters up 35 feet in the air, little skinny narrow things, and they put them in an alley. And we were all up here, the East End Neighborhood Association. I was up here with Josh Whitehead. Josh and I became on first name basis because I dealt with and get permanent parking on our street. So I was very well aware of Josh. We spent 3 years in the city council doing this stuff. He was right back there. And after it was all said and done, we always had that close, narrow vote. You know, the 3-2 darn, you almost made it. They went ahead and put them in. And all of us were just raising cane. Right there at that door, Josh Whitehead assured me, called me by my first name. George, you don't have to worry. It'll only be at Jefferson and Cooper. They will never, ever be near your street because of the way it's established. Never will it be there. Damn, deja vu. Here we are again. Never going to be
It's
here.
been 8 minutes, just so you know. No, you can keep going. I just wanted you to know the 8-minute horn.
Okay, thank you.
That's all.
I'm on a roll.
Yeah.
So let's say we reverse the frontage. You reverse the frontage of the lot. That just changes everything. 3.3.1F, reverse frontage lots are prohibited, period. Oh, but there's one more sentence. Except in situation where a pattern of reverse frontage is established. There you go, precedent. So you allow it here. That means that every single home down that alley, every time one sells, an LLC or someone can come in, buy it, split the lot, put one of these things in the back. And, well, it's been established. You may not be here, and you guys may put a caveat and say, this is only a one-time deal. But you won't be here in 3 years, 5 years, just like when Josh Whitehead told us this. But here we are again. So then you're going to establish that. So why stop on here? This alley goes across Cox, Edgewood, all the way to Parkway. Then there's the alley on the north side of Monroe. Same thing. You were allowed reverse frontage right here. Why not there? So this is something you can just count. This is not just one or two little variances. And all due respect to Ms. Cobb, but I thought, well, maybe we have a chance. There are conditions. The condition is you guys, we get to talk to you, and then you put a fence up. A fence! Are you kidding me? A fence! One last thing I'll say, she's not here today. I told her I'd speak on behalf of it. You don't know what you'll do to Playhouse. Playhouse put millions and millions of dollars into an operation. That alley is their carpool lane. That alley is where they have workshops. That's where alley is where all the city school buses come down and have to air down and allow the children to get out. It takes forever to get them in and out. I know, I live there. That's right there in front of that building. That's their loading zone. That's where they build their sets. You wait till these get built. Then they get built. And then you've got the homeowner can't get in or the Airbnb can't get in. And then they're going to call the police. Who loses? Playhouse. Where are you going to put school buses? I know I'm probably over time, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
Are there any questions for Mr. Collier?
Well, I'm just going to ask you, and you might have said it, and I could have missed it. Do you know when you told the story about how that piece of property got tagged onto the other one? Do you know when that happened?
Approximately 12 years ago.
Okay.
About 12 years.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
So
That
she's
was my
owned the
question.
house for at least a decade.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? All right, well, sorry, Mr. Toon, that's all the time.
Oh, I used it all up.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
I think I've seen every one of your emails, so I hope
Yeah.
y'all had an opportunity to review that.
Yeah, okay, we can't say anymore, but yeah. We're gonna move back to the applicant with 8 minutes of rebuttal time. And so if you'll say your name and address for the record for us.
Sure. My name is Jeremy Turner. I live at 8447 Stockton Place in Germantown, Tennessee.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I did.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. Off-street parking is important to this street. I've been going to the Second Line restaurant since it opened, and so I know what these neighbors have gone through. And so that's why it was important to us as soon as we bought the property, we started the design. We wanted to make sure we were creating off-street parking. That's the reason for the 2-car garages for both units. Met today with my contractor for the existing dwelling, existing home, to create a nice long driveway that goes beyond the gate so that there will be off-street parking for the residents in that home. We are an LLC. The owners of that LLC are myself and my father. We are Memphians. We are lifelong Memphians. This is not some major investment play to make a ton of money. This is a way for my dad to have a retirement. This is a way to subsidize my dad's retirement. That's why the LLC exists, and that's what we're using to purchase the property. We just wanted to make our city better. We saw a blighted piece of property. It was full of fire hazards. It was not up to code. It was a triplex. It was dangerous. The first thing we did was gut it, get rid of the fire hazards, and then I painted the exterior of the home, frankly, just because I felt bad for the way it looked. And I knew that was going to cost me more money in the long run because I still had a lot of work to do. I was probably going to have to repaint it again, but I just wanted it to look better for the rest of the neighbors. So I went ahead and painted. I realized the design of the ADUs is not a Victorian Foursquare, but the ADUs are going to be on an alley adjacent to commercial buildings and metal-clad buildings immediately across the street. So we felt like the design that we have for the ADUs is more in line with the property that they would be fronting. And we have absolutely zero plan to Airbnb this. They will be rentals, but we do not Airbnb. That is not what we do. So, that's all.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you converting the house on the front of the property, on the Monroe, are you converting that to single family?
Yes, ma'am. I pulled the permit.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. It's a 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Question.
Oh, sure.
Okay. The two accessory dwelling units,
I'm sorry.
the two accessory dwelling units in the back,
Yes, ma'am.
are they going to be addressed separately, like say a 911 call or something like that, or mail or whatever? Are they two, is it basically three separate addresses on that one lot?
It's a great question. I look forward to the answer. That's something MLGW will have to assign to us. We don't know that answer yet, and we can't go to MLGW until we came before this board. Go ahead, Todd.
Mr. Gerlach, they will address it separately. What we don't know are the numbers yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so the ADUs that we've done within the city, we wait until MLGW sets that mark, and then they give us a number. So either there's a street number, or they do like a west or an east or something like that.
Right.
That's right, yeah.
Other questions?
Well, I just wanted to add two things about the parking. I mentioned the parking for the ADUs. So we'll have 3 for each, 2 in the garage for each, and 1 guest space for each. But in addition to that, there's a driveway to the house. And what Mr. Turner is doing is he's extended that, so there will be a parking pad in the back. So essentially, when it was a triplex, you can imagine all the parking would have been on the street. Now, it's a single family and 2 ADUs, and all of the parking plus guest parking will be on that site. And just to address the comment about additional variances, I mean, we've looked at this closely, and I know that Mrs. Cobb and her group has looked at it closely, so we stand with the variances that we're requesting, those 3. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, with that, if we could get a motion to approve BOA 2024-18 as conditioned by staff.
So moved.
All right, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Are we in discussion?
We're in discussion, yeah.
Well, I just want to say that I am completely in favor of the idea of infill in the city, up, not out, all the goals of Memphis 3.0. However, I think to make that happen, we should do it in a planned way. And that, to me, means following the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, you've got a real hardship reason for not doing it. And when I look at this, I just don't see that L shape as a hardship for this property that would prevent it from being developed. It has a triplex on the front of it already. You're converting it to single family, you would automatically have the ability to have an accessory dwelling unit. I don't see having it on the alley as a hardship either. So I don't think this meets any of our standards for approving something like this. And it hadn't been that long. In fact, right now, changes are being made in the rules governing accessory dwelling units. And I just think it's fair and a more planned way of beginning to implement what we want in the 3.0 plan, to let these rules allowing a larger ADU on a smaller lot and so on. Let them work for a while before we start approving something like this that doesn't follow any number of the rules. And nobody's mentioned Midtown Overlay not allowing metal buildings, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case, and I'll ask the staff to confirm that. And so I'll just say that on this case, I agree with the neighbors, and not just the ones that are down here today, but the ones who submitted letters. And those include people that are not even necessarily people who live in this particular neighborhood, but MidtownMemphis.org. There's a letter in the staff report from them, Central Gardens, and so on. And so I guess my position on this is it doesn't meet our standards. It's too early to start going beyond what we are only just now approving to relax the rules. And let's add this density in a more planned way. So that,
Could I
those
speak?
are my thoughts.
We're in
I'm sorry.
discussion.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
We're already in discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry for the long.
Oh, no. Unless, does anybody want to hear from the applicant? Like
No.
other five?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so that I'm clear, though, if we have a single-family dwelling, they are allowed one,
180 up to 700
Correct.
square
Not
feet.
as large as the ones they're proposing, but they're allowed one.
okay?
Yes.
So is it the square foot excessiveness that's more of the concern, or the fact that it's two of them? Which one gives you the most?
I tell you, it's really, to me, there's 4 or 5 or 6 different variances from the regulations here. And so I just look at it as a whole and say, this is just too much. Let's give the regulations a chance to work. Let's don't just, slavishly say density, it doesn't matter anything else. Let's just get the density. I don't think that's the way planning is supposed to work. So it's not a particular thing, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I had a thought, as far as, so it was a triplex prior. I don't know how they fit 3 paying people, but they did. And so I understand if they were getting income from 3 separate rental people, and now the hardship is maintaining that. But now you're doubling, tripling the space. And we've addressed accessory dwelling units in other parts of the city. We've seen with this board. And we also denied them with other more, I guess, exacerbating stories, like a parent that needed a place to live. So I agree with Mary and the neighbors, but I do understand the hardship in that going from 3 income to now creating the 1 unit, which the way it really was supposed to be originally built. I can see where that hardship is. So that was just my 2 cents.
All right, any other thoughts?
Right, just, and this deals with procedure. I don't know if it's a question or a comment, maybe just tell me if I'm wrong. Opposition pointed out a number of variances. There are only 2 variances that we're considering. So even if we were to approve it, those other variances, if they are real, I don't know if they're real or not, but if they're real, they would still be there. And so the applicant still wouldn't be able to build. Is that right? I mean, or they'd have to address those other variances before they could proceed with their plan. Is that, am I right?
You want to speak to that, Mr. Pensis?
Well, as you know, our code is very complex. So if there were any variances missed when you approved this, unless we specifically called it out, they would just be assumed to be approved, although the vast majority of the things they pointed out were not accurate. Like this lot does have frontage on Monroe. The accessory structures are allowed to be 5 feet from the alley. The alley does not constitute frontage here. This is not a reverse frontage lot. A reverse frontage lot would be like if this lot went from Monroe to Poplar Avenue. So a lot of what they pointed out was just inaccurate.
Okay, thank you.
But I think if for some reason there was a variance and it's not approved here and it's found that for some reason the staff was incorrect, they would not have a variance for that. I mean, they're only going to get the variance for the things they asked for. In staff's position, these are the only variances we see that are needed.
Okay, gotcha.
So if that in fact is discovered, then they would have to come back, right?
Any other thoughts?
But I just want to make one comment on that. Wouldn't you, and Mr. Penzie, I didn't hear exactly what you said, but in some respects, just approving the site plan would be seen as approving the variance for certain things. Is that true?
If it was something extremely minor.
That would be controlled by the site plan by virtue of the fact that we approved it, you would consider the variance approved. Is that true or not?
Those interpretations have been made in the
Okay,
past.
okay.
Any other thoughts?
Is there a requirement to do the two? I know from your point, Ms. Gerlach, that we had, let's say, three different occupants. And then we're going to a single-family home, and then looks like, single-family home, maybe 6 occupants, I think. There's 2 bedrooms, right? For each.
Yeah, there'd be 6 total bedrooms on the property, and not knowing how many people are, 1 to 2 people per bedroom.
Right. So we're definitely doubling our, I'm just gonna say bedrooms for my sense of familiarity. So we are doubling, and I guess my thought is, if we allow for a single-family home 1, can they not do 1?
They could do 1 in accordance with the code. That's not what they're asking for today.
Right, they want 2, and then oversized, right?
Yeah, I know it's an L-shaped lot, but when I look at, there's only allowed to be 1, and we have 2 that are too big.
Right.
It just seems like a bridge too far.
I'm with you on that.
For variances. There's just, it's not 750 feet. It's 2 that are 900 square feet on the second floor with a garage beneath. So they're not small structures.
Not at all.
I don't think I can vote for it the way it is.
1 probably would have gotten me, but 2 oversized, I can't.
Well, the L shape is what gets me because it is L shape. The intent of the 1 auxiliary structure kind of aligned with the way the properties were originally, in my mind, the way the properties were originally aligned. So, but this property is so unique because it is the L shape. So it almost, even though it's 2, from a visibility standpoint, it will still feel like 1 per lot. So the intent of it being 1 per still kind of remains, even though one owner has 2 of them. But the idea of the way the lots are structured, it still feels like 1 per. So I'm less inclined to look at it from that standpoint. But the size and the architectural character, I think, was one of the bigger concerns they have, which I don't know if there's anything you can, your style is your style,
I go back and forth on the architecture. I get it is nothing like the house in front, but it also sits right on commercial. It's just like,
It's right
I know
across,
the code
yeah.
says I can almost get around that, but it's tough. The idea is having something in the backyard that looks like what's in the front yard. And it definitely doesn't, although from the front yard, you'll never see it. from the backyard, you'll see those two buildings that look similar.
Point, it kind of complements what's on the commercial side more so than it does what's on the Monroe side, which could be a good thing. I mean, it's one of those things that's very subjective to the person. Either they like modern.
I'd say it wouldn't be bad looking from Playhouse in the Square if it looked like a house and not like a storage shed. Like, I don't think you'd ever say, like, I can't believe they built a house there.
Yeah.
Like, because that's what the neighborhood looks like, except for the commercial. But you could see more people with the opinion the other way of like, oh, I wonder why they put that in the back, even though the commercial. So.
Well, I know we're in discussion, but if
Yeah.
it sounds like several people are talking about they've got an issue with two and they're allowed to do one at a certain size. I mean, could we discuss them doing one at the size they're showing it and maybe get a nod from them that might be something that they'd consider?
We can discuss that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can definitely discuss that.
But I'm putting it out there.
The other option would be
Make that a condition.
requesting a hold to come back with a different site plan that shows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
don't
as
want them to get
opposed to
voted
us.
down and then be done and have to,
Yeah.
recreate the wheel. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to.
I guess my other issue is basically, I guess what's happening with these accessory dwelling units, it's like an illegal subdivision of a smaller scale. I mean, because now you've got three official addresses from a MLGW 911 health code, whatever issue. And so now you're basically in the L shape. I don't know how that was created. It was created, and from what we were told, for the purposes of getting money for parking. So it wasn't created with the intention of building, but it's still some kind of screwy subdivision of a property that didn't go through the correct subdivision, or at least I don't know. I guess I'll stop speaking on it. It's just
It would have been
weird.
like a lot line adjustment, and our code basically allows lot line adjustments as long as the minimum standards are maintained.
Gotcha. Okay. But so a lot line adjustment is now becoming a subdivision. That's the way I'm reading it, with the addition of two more addresses. So I don't know how you go from a lot line and accessory to three fully standing address structures.
I think I'm with Mr. Claybrook of giving them a little bit more time and see if they can bring us something that is a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, I could
and
agree with
maybe one
that.
structure.
Can I get a head nod or something?
What's the,
If we were to propose a 30-day hold,
To give you a chance to come back.
if you maybe pare it down to one of size, whatever, if we were to say, let's give them a 30-day hold to reassess the site plan.
Do one structure.
yeah, so, I think
Here,
maybe.
we can really only get a head nod
Oh,
because we're not in that part of the thing.
yes.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so does anyone want to make the motion for the hold?
Second.
All right, any discussion on that? I would say, you can bring back whatever you want at the time of that, but you've heard us talk, it seems, you got some thoughts, so just take those into consideration. And any other discussion before we vote?
I would simply say if we do the whole, I think we need to be clear of I don't know if we got to be clear, but if we're more focused on the architectural character, or if we're more focused on the square footage, or if we're more focused on the quantity. Because if he comes back with one that looks just like this one, are we going to have issuance?
I think all those three things are important to look at.
To me, I don't see any reason, this is another one of those cases where I just don't see any reason why the Board of Adjustment has any reason to intervene in this case. There is no hardship. He's got a triplex, he's making it into single family of his own choice. The lot does not have a hardship that prevents it from being developed, and that's what our standards say, we should find if we are going to approve a variance. And on top of that, too, I just, like I say, I just think it's too early after we have just been about the purpose of liberalizing the ability to have accessory dwelling units and allowing them to be larger and so on. I just think it's too early for us to now say, well, we're not even going to wait and see how that pans out. We're going to go on and start just intervening and making changes, even though it's clear that there's really no hardship with this property, or at least in my mind there is. It's clear. It may not be for the rest of you.
I have a quick question on that. No, well, on what we suggested. If it is confirmed that the main dwelling becomes a single family, will they have to come back if they just do one?
No,
They do one,
can,
that's what she's saying. If they do one that's within the regulations.
they have
no.
rights. They have all the rights in the world
But
to have an accessory dwelling unit.
they can choose if they want to come back
And-
or just build what they want to build.
And now it can be, a maximum of 700 square feet, depending on, I don't know if they're going to expand the house or whatever. Right now, I don't even think you'd be able to build one of 700 because it's maximum of 7 or 1/3 of the floor area
So there'll
of the
still
main
be
building.
there'll still be a variance that they'll come back and request if they wanted to exceed that.
And they might have some kind of hardship, that would go with that. But I just don't know. In this case, just getting it down to one with everything else being the same, I don't think it addresses, in my opinion, the main issue, which is
So how do you move
no
forward?
variance.
How do you move forward with this? Like, does it stay a hold? or does
Well,
it-
no, I
does it
think
become a
that,
vote?
we hold it because I don't want them to have to reapply. They're welcome to come back with any variance they want, and they have to prove to the board of the reason why they get it, and we already know at least where one person probably is going to be. So they, that's up to them. But by doing a hold, they can opt not to ever come back at all, but they don't have to pay another filing fee and stuff like that.
Okay, that's a good point.
And so that's the whole
Yeah.
idea. But yeah, I'm not guaranteeing anything with a hold.
Right.
Like come back with one and we'll do it is not being said.
Okay.
We can't hear anything else for anybody. We're just gonna.
Just wanted to ask if we just said we want the approval for one, if we take two off the table, since that seems to be the bigger issue, there's two, we just ask for approval for one on the part of the lot that's not the L shape. I would just offer that for.
Okay, do you all want to entertain and go through that on the current site plan?
I mean, if he wants to drop down to one, I guess we can vote on it. and
Yeah,
if
we
it-
can do it now instead of waiting 30 days.
We're getting out of hand. Yeah, I'm gonna let you talk in just a second because we let him talk and why don't you go ahead and come up? You got 30 seconds. No, go ahead and come up, Mr. Toon. But give your name and address for the record because you didn't say anything before.
My name is Shannon Toon, and I live at 2181 Monroe. If you're going to table this.
Oh, wait, you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, no,
I
the
do.
truth, everything. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Toon.
If this is going to be tabled, I would ask that we be provided something in advance so that we would know what we're coming to address on that day. And today, just changing it on the fly, that's not what we're here to address on. We're here to address on what's before the board right now. And that's what we came prepared to address. We're not prepared to address any other arguments that they may have changing this on the fly.
Okay.
So we would request that we be provided something in advance so that we can address what needs to be addressed with regard to that.
Understood. Okay, based on that, I think I would rather have a hold instead of go into this and they can bring something back to us. So are there any other comments before we vote? All right, all those in favor of a 30-day hold signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. You know, we often don't have anything until like the Friday before, but it is available online, like the staff report. So you should be able to get it, but it may not be until that Friday.
So it'd be the Friday before.
Yes, sir. And it could be Monday. I mean, that's typical. I can't guarantee it, though.
But our submission would be due prior to that, correct?
I would talk to the staff planner for what's going on with that. Yeah. You can always come down and submit anything you want here.
At the
Yeah.
hearing.
It just,
I may not be able to get down here after West.
yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, Mr.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Cobbs. Yeah. Okay. All right, Mr. Penzis, if you'll call the next case for us.
Item number 7, BOA 2024-0023 at 3487 Poplar Avenue.
All right, I see the applicants here. I don't think we had any opposition to this. I think they just want to talk about conditions. So, Ms. Hull, do you want to give like a real quick staff report? And then we'll,
Just tell us what they want to
Chairman,
do.
if I may, I think what we would like to do is let the applicant, because
Okay,
they
that's fine.
have a concern about, I think, a single condition, so we would like to hear what that is, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Does that
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Maybe condense it.
Hi, Ms. Reeves. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. Will you give your name and address for the record?
Cindy Reeves, SR Consulting, 5909 Shelby Oaks Drive, Suite 200.
Okay, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I think that you're all familiar with this site. This is the Exxon that was at Poplar and Highland, and it's just a miracle that when the building caught on fire, it only damaged the C-store. It did not do any damage to the canopy, the fuel pumps, or the existing signs. So it was a blessing that the fire department and MAPCO and Majors Management was able to contain the fire to just the C-store. So we're here to rebuild the C-store, and we're asking your permission because this is at the edge of the University District overlay. This is their prototype building is the first slide that you're looking at. The next slide. Can you go to the next slide? The next slide is the building that they're going to put here exceeds the 60% transparency. They're going to 74% transparency, even though, as I said, they're at the edge of the University District. And Highland Street is their frontage street, even though their front door faces Poplar. So we're meeting all of the conditions of the University District overlay that we can. Next slide. This is the University District that shows we're at the edge, everything I just mentioned. Next slide. This is the S1 to S4 urban frontage required landscape plates. And as you can see, our site does not meet these requirements. Our building is not up to the street because we're building the building back where it was. It's going to be in the exact same footprint that it was. It's not going to be up against the street. Next slide. This is what the staff is asking us to do in order to meet the S1 to S4 plate. We tear out all the sidewalk that surrounds the site. We put in an 8-foot grass strip. Then we put in a new 5-foot sidewalk that is encumbered by light poles and the shopping center monument sign. And then you have we think that we can fit a small piece of grass on the other side of the sidewalk on the Highland frontage. Next slide. This is what we're asking for, is to keep it landscaped and keep the sidewalk where it is, keep the landscaping where it is, because the landscaping also did not get damaged. And we're complying with all their other conditions. We're closing the 2 curb cuts, one along Highland and one along Poplar, and those 2 curb cuts will now be landscaping. And it won't be a sidewalk, it would be landscaping. If we do the staff recommendation, we have the 8-foot grass strip, but that has a tree every 30 foot. Next slide. This is the 2 curb cuts that we're closing. Next slide. This is some of the existing vegetation that they're asking us to remove. Next slide. And we just feel that the vegetation that's there is mature. There's mature trees, there's mature shrubs. The sidewalk that it abuts to is also the same sidewalk. The sidewalk that is on either side of it is not transitioned back 8 feet. Next slide. You can see the Buster sign. If we transition back, we're gonna be in the way of the Buster sign and the light pole. Next sign. This is exceptions to landscape plates. And on a case-by-case basis, the zoning administrator is authorized to grant exceptions to streetscape plates. And we feel that we meet these, this section of the Unified Development Code because the abutting sidewalks, the abutting properties, their sidewalks are identical to what our sidewalks are today, and that we want them to remain that way. Next slide. This is the variances that we asked for. We did get approval of the variance to keep the building at the original building footprint place, and we got rejected on all of the other variances we requested, and we conceded with all of them. That's fine. We'll take the 2 pole signs down, which is a major ask. We'll close 2 of the curb cuts, which is another major ask. And we just feel we're adding electric vehicle charging stations, we're adding bike racks, we're adding a lot of transparency, and we're giving Memphis something really nice on the corner of Poplar and Highland. Next slide. This is just an overall of the surrounding area, and then the next slide. And this is what we're proposing, and this is what we would like you to approve and not require us to meet the S1 to S4 landscape requirements and let us do an equivalent alternative, which would supplement landscaping where the curb cuts were closed and then keep the existing landscaping that we can. I'm here for any questions.
Okay, are there any questions?
So those are your only 2 requested changes from what the staff is recommending?
Only one change.
Yeah, having to do with the landscape.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. That's the only change is the landscape. We conceded to every other variance that they denied. We were like, that's fine. We don't need the 2 pole signs. That's fine. We don't need the curb cuts.
Okay.
You know, we'll meet and exceed
It's
everything
kind
that
of
we can.
complicated. I just want to make sure I understood it.
Yeah. One condition, 1 request, 1 ask. And we just want to be able to keep the sidewalk where it is, keep the landscaping, not have a grass strip with a tree every 30 feet that is not mature yet. And we've got some very nice mature trees on that corner and landscaping. I know you're probably all familiar with it. So I'm here for any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions? Does staff want to respond to that? Okay.
I might also add, we've still got to go to Land Use Control Board for a use variance for this site because we're now a legal non-conforming use. So we went Board of Adjustment and special use permit instead of filing a plan development like I think we could have, which they just did down the street at Central and Highland. But we chose to go with what staff recommended and come to this board to meet all the variance needed to meet the University District overlay. And we've met with the University District and they're all in favor of this. So we've had good reception to everything that they're trying to do here.
Perfect.
Okay, Latanya Hull with the Division of Planning and Development. As the applicant stated, we're here to discuss there are a series of variances that are requested initially. After speaking with the applicant did make some changes, some concessions, so that they can meet some of our requirements. So the applicant operated a non-conforming convenience store and gas station in the University District overlay for some years. And as we know, the subject property had a fire in 2023. And because it lost more than 75% of its value, it no longer was a non-conforming use. It has to now comply with University District overlay requirements in order to redevelop. In considering their application, we did consider the fact that the building was subjected to fire, and we realized that it would be a hardship and practically very difficult for the applicant to put the building in accordance with the new University District overlay rules. It would have required them to move the building and the canopy and the signs, et cetera. So we did concede to that very, primary requirement to be able to even be operating in the district in that way. We did allow them to leave the facility where it was. However, we thought it was important to be able to adhere to the intent and the spirit of the overlay rules. And so we did require them to adhere to the other variances that they requested. So they resubmitted a site plan that adhered to the closing of the curb cuts, as the applicant mentioned, as well as with the they agreed to the signs. They added a bike rack, a side patio, which we approved, and some parking spaces that we rejected. However, they did not initially agree to condition 2 and 3 regarding the streetscape and the signs. Now we're at a point where they have agreed to the signs, and really the only issue we're considering right now is the landscaping. So I want to focus primarily on that aspect of the applicant's presentation. So I want to start off with looking at an aerial view of where this property is located. This property is located at the intersection of Popular and South Highland. This is a very heavy commercially used piece of property. It has heavy single family, it has heavy multi-family residential, and heavy commercial uses. And so if you look at the images, this is a higher level image of Popular, and you can see all the commercial uses, all the residential uses. We zoom in a little bit just around the property, and you can see the shopping center across the street and all the cars that are here. And then a little bit closer here, and then we look here right at the property, which is this area. It's very highly populated, lots of traffic. And so we considered what the applicant submitted, and this is it transposed on the actual property. Both roads are heavily traveled by pedestrians. The sidewalk is directly on the curb with no degree of separation between the traffic and the pedestrians on the sidewalk. A bus stop is located right here on the corner of Popular and South Highland. And so we feel that this layout causes a safety hazard for pedestrians and bus passengers who are required to stand and walk dangerously close to all of that traffic that you've seen in this area. And these are just some of the pictures of the site. As you can see, this gentleman standing right next to this car, and this little kid standing at this corner as well. And we think that that is a safety hazard. The required streetscapes in this particular district provides a minimum of 8 feet of separation between that traffic and the pedestrians walking along the sidewalk. They also provide an additional layer of protection by having the trees along that frontage as well, to, in case there is some kind of incident, that just provides a different layer of protection. So we do believe that adhering to the University District overlay requirements are in the best interest of the general welfare. Again, they're consistent with what's required, the standards that we put in our code. They have that landscape barrier protection between the traffic and the pedestrians. And so this is a side-by-side comparison. Here we have this sidewalk that's about 5 or 6 feet wide, right along this Popular strip. Then we have what we're proposing, which is a sidewalk that's set back a minimum of 8 feet, along with trees that provide an extra barrier. It provides an opportunity of even moving that bus stop from this corner somewhere along this area to provide even additional protection if that's what the district wanted. And so our conclusion related to this is that we believe that there is no unusual characteristic of the property preventing the installation of one of the required streetscapes. We believe that installing one of the required streetscapes does not impose any practical difficulty and undue hardship to the applicant, particularly given the fact that we have conceded to the major requirement, which is moving the building. Additionally, we think that granting this variance could be injurious to the general public because we are maintaining this issue of having pedestrians and bus riders that close to the traffic. And staff finds that granting a variance from this requirement based on the applicant saving money is inconsistent with the UDC, which prohibits us from doing so. So we are recommending that in addition to all the other requirements, that the applicant adheres to one of the streetscapes that's required for the University District. And that concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
All right, are there any questions from Ms. Pohl?
Was there any feedback from Cecil Humphreys or the university on this? Normally they show up to these cases, so I didn't see any letters or...
No, the university did not comment on the case.
Okay.
I can answer that. I actually sat down and met with Cecil, and Cecil was very happy with everything that they were doing here. We also met with TK Buchanan, and she was very happy with everything that we're doing here. And whenever I get an opportunity, I'd like just a little bit of a rebuttal time, please.
I do have a question, Ms. Holt. You said that one of the streetscapes, is there a preference, or which streetscape has priority in your?
The four that are presented are the ones that are required by the UDC, and the applicant can choose either of those. And the applicant made a point that there were no buildings on this frontage on their property, and that's true because we did not require them to move the building, but technically, if we were to adhere a strict adherence to the code, we would have to require them to move their building to the sidewalk to look this way. So we didn't require them to do that because of the hardship. So that's why there's no building on their property there. But we still want to make sure that we have that, that landscape that's required for the reasons I presented in the presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question. I just did just a street view of this property and the surrounding areas. I mean, from what if I might be looking at it incorrectly, but from what I'm looking at, it seems like most properties that are kind of adjacent to it or even down the street follow what the current configuration is. Is that true? Meaning the sidewalk is right adjacent to the street with the green space buffer happening behind the sidewalk. So I just wonder if we're talking about being injurious to the surrounding area. It looks like that entire surrounding area follows that same format. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that properly.
Lots of them do follow that, but if we look along South Highland, which is the university frontage, a lot of South Highland properties do follow one of those streetscapes as it goes closer towards the university. So yes, along Popular here, as you know, the applicant showed, this property is on the edge of the university district overlay. And so not very many of these properties on Highland fall within that requirement. And so they are probably within their right to be that way. But since this particular property has lost its non-conforming status, it's now required to adhere to that requirement. And we also have to consider the fact that this is going to be here probably 30, 40, 50 years down the road. And so we want to make sure that as we move in the direction of what's required for the university district, that we are beginning to really adhere to some of the standards that are in the university district. So although it may look like it's inconsistent now, any of those other uses that are in the university district, if they were to have to redevelop or have to come before us for a reason, they also would be required to now adhere to these districts, these requirements as well.
Thank you.
have a quick question for you. I'm just looking at the streetscapes and just trying to figure out what's going on. It looks like two of them, so the two on the left, they show the little trees in the grates. So when that's like that, is it all, it's all sidewalk, but it has those great trees that still kind of move where you would walk further from the street? Is that accurate?
So on all of these examples where the trees are, when there's a line, so S1, S3, and S4, all have some kind of lawn associated with the trees. It looks like S2 does not have the lawn inside with the trees.
Right,
so
okay.
with 1, 3, and 4, you'd have grass and trees, then you'd have the sidewalk.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Ms. Reeves, do you want to rebut anything or speak some more?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
We are at the edge of the University District overlay, and the properties to the west of us are not going to be meeting this streetscape requirement. The property across the street is not going to meet this requirement. And as you said, Mr. Campbell, all of the properties in each direction meet the requirement, meet the exact same sidewalk requirements that we have today. The Dillard Shopping Center that is to the south, that's not going to be redeveloping in my lifetime, and I don't see that would be able to, even if it did redevelop, I don't see them moving that up to the front of the street, up to the street like the newer properties that are south on Highland, all those properties that have been able to adhere to these S1 to S4 plates. They have all been new construction where their buildings are up closer to the street, and it's all new construction. We're not dealing with new construction here. We're taking an unfortunate accident and trying to make it better and still try to meet and adhere to almost all of the restrictions and the restrictions that you have in the University District, even though we're at the edge of the overlay, and all the abutting properties are not going to be able to meet this requirement either. And then we also have 5 utility poles and the Buster's monument sign that will need to be considered for relocation. So, and the utility poles and all are shown in your presentation, utility poles and the monument sign. So we do have, if we do tear out the sidewalks, put in the tree lawn, and then we would be removing all of the 5 street lights that they have in their parking lot. Those will all have to be replaced.
Okay. Any questions from Ms. Reeves?
I've got a question. You know, in creating the requirements for the University District overlay, one of the considerations staff talked about was safety. And I just want to give you a chance to talk about that. The sidewalk is right up on the street. Do you have any thoughts, any response to that issue?
To my knowledge, I mean, I don't think that there's been any pedestrian accidents right here. I don't know. It's worked all up and down Poplar Avenue for years. It's the entire length of Poplar Avenue. I don't know of any section on Poplar that does have this 8-foot lawn, then a 5-foot sidewalk, and then your building or whatever. So I don't feel that it's, you know, I mean, we could put the sidewalk further into the site. I don't know what would be a good compromise, but it would, your residents or your pedestrians are probably not going to go out of their way to go further into the site and then around onto a new sidewalk. They're going to do just like they do when you build pedestrian bridges. They still cross the street. They don't ever cross the pedestrian bridge unless they're wanting to, but most of the time they don't. So we're just at the will of the board. We'll do what the board, you know, tells us that we need to do. We just felt that with us being at the edge and with nothing abutting us that's going to continue this streetscape, that it it was not going to be out of character to get that one variance.
Go ahead.
I do have one question, and just to make sure I understand, if you just widen the street, the sidewalk, you just widened it, nothing else, just widened it, that would make it safer. Would you be able to fit that on your?
We might be able to widen the sidewalk 3 feet, and it won't disturb as much of the landscaping as it would if we tore everything out. But I love your idea and compromise of widening the sidewalk an additional 3 feet, and that way we could work around the light poles that are existing with the new sidewalk. So it could go around those light poles. That's a wonderful idea. I appreciate you putting that out there for everyone to consider. So, but that is something that we would definitely consider doing and would be glad to do that.
Chairman, if I may, I brought up these photos to show where those light poles are that the applicant is referencing, and they are right actually near the sidewalk and sort of at the edge of the landscaping. So any modification to those light poles that would have to occur whether we increase sidewalks or made it more landscaping. So right now, we don't see where those would have to be relocated. I guess I'm not understanding what the applicant's point is about having to relocate them. So, to do what we're asking to do.
You're asking us to tear up the sidewalk and put grass 8 feet. Right now, there's a 5-foot sidewalk, and then you have your light poles. And what Ms. Baker was asking is if we could make that sidewalk wider, which would not require us to relocate the light poles. We would be able to keep the light poles where they're at and widen out the sidewalk by adding another 3-foot section of concrete to make another sidewalk.
So you're suggesting that you won't be able to remove the sidewalks and put grass there with the light poles being there?
Yes, we can add to the existing sidewalk. Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, I mean, you would get to that point every once in a while, I guess, where you'd have to, it would skinny down to go around the pole.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it would be wider.
Yes, it definitely would, and we're in agreement with doing that.
Staff is saying, I think you're saying that regardless of what we do, the light poles won't have to be moved. That's not an issue.
They will not have to be moved.
So that's not an issue. Yeah, right. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I was understanding that.
And I'm trying to find my drawing, and I was thinking.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to make that motion that we amend the recommendation to provide that the sidewalk would be widened by 3 feet rather than the following what I guess is the 8-foot grass strip and then the 5-foot sidewalk. If anyone else agrees with doing that.
Mary, I'm fine with that. I mean, this to me has a different feel than down by Newbies, or I guess Newbies not there anymore, sorry. But down on the strip where they've got big planters out and there's students walking, and I mean, this is Poplar and Highland. There's almost 50,000 cars going through this intersection a day. It is at the end. Now, okay, can we do the trees on Highland maybe? But Poplar's got a totally different feel to me. And it's just, we have these cases all the time about something being put on Union and people saying, well, we want it to be walkable. Well, it is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Are we in discussion now?
We're not. So why don't we get a motion to approve BOA 2024-23 as conditioned by staff?
So moved.
And then, do y'all want to, Mary, would you like to make the motion to, let's look at our conditions.
It's condition 2.
Condition 2, thank you, sir. I think what you'd say,
Well, you go ahead, because I don't have it pulled up.
well, I think what we'd do is we would remove, if you did what you're talking about, you would remove condition 2 and just have that the existing sidewalk be expanded where possible, to an 8-foot sidewalk.
Yes.
All right. Is there any discussion of that friendly amendment? Seeing none, so that's so ordered, that's the conditions that we're voting on. Is there any discussion over the broader conditions, broader?
No, I think that's the only.
That's the only one at issue, but is everybody okay with that one being added?
I mean, I'm fine with it simply for the fact that this wasn't a planned new construction. It's happening by happenstance because they're replacing the building that burnt down. So otherwise, this condition would have remained with no one blinking an eye on it. So if the compromise is a wider sidewalk, that's totally fine.
What it is now. And I just have to say this, that I'm very sympathetic with the position of the staff. I understand it exactly, and I can remember being in that same position myself many times. But, you know, over time, I've just realized that some of these streets, changing them on a lot-by-lot basis is just tough. You almost have to have an overall plan and then come in there with a government project because otherwise it ends up being piecemeal and back and forth. And so I understand where you're coming from, and I love the idea of it, but I don't know. I feel like I've gotten to where now I can see why it's difficult on some streets like this to make that happen.
Yeah, you know, I've got, you know, I think I'm fine on this one, but just to try to help me figure out how to think about these cases in the future, you know, it's with the overlay, the university district overlay, somebody, I mean, to your point, Mary, it's hard to change it on a lot-by-lot basis, but the way you get there, you have to have a plan. And somebody came up, you know, we've come up with this plan. This is where we want to go. Now, we can't go in and force each property owner to change it immediately. So with the plan, the idea is that over time, the lots will gradually, one by one, get there so we get to the point, to the place where we are in the plan. The thing that I'm thinking about here is, I think, you know, it sounds like one of the arguments is that this lot is on the edge of the overlay district, and so we ought to maybe not let it be bound by it because it's on the edge. Well, every district is going to have an edge, and you know, wherever the boundaries are, I mean, if you start letting the edges get away without it, it kind of defeats the purpose of a plan. So that, you know, so if it's either it's within the boundary or it's not, if we're going to have these overlay plans, we ought to enforce them throughout the district. And even if it's just one lot at a time, well, that's the idea, that over time, most of the lots in there will come into compliance. So I just from a theoretical perspective, in general, you know, it seems to me like this one ought to be. Now, I'm okay with what we're talking about, but for next time, are we going to give special consideration to lots just because they happen to be on the edge, or just because they happen to be the first or one of the few lots in an overlay district that's having to change to comply? I'm not sure that we ought to do that just because they're on the edge or they're one of the first ones.
Well, for me, I think for this particular one, it was just the nature of why this building was being built in the first place, which was because it burned down. If somebody is coming from a new development, obviously, I would hold them to the standards that she's talking about. So only for me on this particular one is strictly because it's a replacement of a building that was burnt down or demolished to no fault of anybody except nature. I get your point.
I agree with you if we were talking about a whole construction, but I mean, the heart of it was, you know, the stations, the bays, all of that were still in existence. I know she said 75% of it was demolished, but when you look in hindsight of the building itself, pretty much everything else is still in its place. And so we're kind of just replacing this building, but in a sense, coming towards, because I can't say that this is totally not in compliance with the green space that they are providing. So we're getting there. And to your point, pushing that and enforcing that. So I think there was a good compromise on both sides. But at some point, to your point, we do have to stick to the standard because we are trying to get to a certain plan or look for the city. But I think everybody's kind of on the same page because we're basically just replacing the building instead of coming up with a new structure. Had this been a new plan and new pumps and new canopies, okay, we could push for, because if they had graded the whole lot and cleared it out and then started building, I think that we would have room to uphold the overlay standards. But we're just kind of putting the building and sprinkling some things back in, so.
Okay. Any other thoughts before we vote? All right, if you'll, Mr. Penzis, you'll give us a roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Roos.
Yes.
Ms. Foster.
Yes.
Ms. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Clayton. Mr.
Hey,
Clayton.
yes. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Ms. Gerlach.
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Selden.
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.2, 2.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Chair Rainey.
No.
Motion carries. Yeah. All right, if you'll call our next case.
Item number 13, BOA 2024-0034 at 2020 Alton Avenue.
All right, and are we similar on this case as we were in the last one that the applicant?
Yes, the applicant would like to discuss them.
All right. If the applicant will give their name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Whitehead, Birch Porter Johnson, 130 North Court.
All right, and then you had some issues with some of the conditions, I believe?
Yes, sir, and I have a handout that's being disseminated right now that will go through those conditions. First and foremost, representing the school board is strongly committed to the Longview Heights neighborhood. As many of you know, Longview Heights is a hidden gem in this city. It is an extremely stable neighborhood. However, that stability has brought upon us a double-edged sword. It has a very aging population with a decreasing school population. And so the neighborhood has experienced a triple whammy of school closures: Alton Elementary, Longview Middle, and Southside High. Longview Middle has recently been demolished and turned into a Porter Leaf facility. This Alton Elementary location, we hope to renovate into a administrative office facility with classrooms. When Sean Isham, who is with the planning department at the school board, who's with us this afternoon, approached me, I first pointed out to him, I said, well, I think we're okay because there's a section of the UDC that covers city and county-owned properties. UDC section 10.12 says, under no circumstance shall any property or structure owned or leased by the city of Memphis or Shelby County that was constructed prior to January 1st, 2011 be considered a non-conforming use or structure. Modifications, alterations, and expansions to said infrastructure may be performed, providing the bulk requirements of this code are being met. The bulk requirements of this code are being met, but the DPD nevertheless wanted us to file, notwithstanding that section of the UDC, this variance request. And I think once we got the staff report with the conditions, we realized why. There's many conditions in there that would be very costly to us. The school board is spending $4 million to renovate this facility into, again, administrative and training facility. And several hundred of those $1,000 are reflected on the exterior improvements to the site. OPD's conditions would increase that exponentially. So let me just go through the memo here. And I'm going to add an additional condition. After speaking with some of the neighbors, I believe we have another condition that should meet some of their concerns. So number one, we're fine with. Number two, we're fine with. Number three, after the staff report came out, I did consult the school board, and we are relocating the dumpsters into an area of the site. It's photographed in Exhibit B. but it's also reflected on Exhibit A, which is the site plan. There's an existing portal that used to go to the cafeteria, the kitchen, that is completely encased by opaque brick material that is compatible with the principal structure. So number 3, we're amending, but it basically meets the intent of number 3. It's just we're using existing brick walls for that. Number 4, we'd like
Hey, can I stop you real quick on that one? So, like in the picture, I see the dumpsters outside. You're saying they're going back in that little area?
Yes, sir.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
On condition number 4, we would like that struck. The 100-foot limitation on continuous uninterrupted fencing is really more applicable to opaque wooden fencing. We spent about $200,000 on our wrought iron or wrought iron-like perimeter fencing. To add brick columns at every 100 feet would cost us, in cost alone, about $50,000. Condition number 5 similarly deals with the perimeter fencing. It would cost upwards of $100,000 to move it 8 feet behind the sidewalk. The location of the fence meets the UDC, and Exhibit, I think it's C, reflects the perimeter fencing as constructed from drone footage. We believe that maybe condition number 5 might be based upon a concern about the site triangle. And the site triangle here, given the alignment of Alice Avenue when it comes up against Alton Avenue, the site triangle is completely within the right-of-way or the sidewalk area. Finally, number 6, we meet the parking requirements. We meet the 1 per 300 square foot of floor area parking requirements. So we believe that our parking plan is reflected in our site plan. And the other item of number 6 deals with a lighting plan. Mr. Chairman, we're not adding any outdoor lighting, so we don't believe an outdoor lighting plan is necessary. Finally, a new condition number 4, Mr. Chairman, I'll say this slowly, and I think this is responsive to our neighbors. Number 4 would read, the neighbors' concern dealt with this becoming maybe a school similar to Northwest Prep, which is the old Tech High School, which is, the school board uses the term alternative school students. It welcomes students that have had trouble in other schools. That is not what we're planning, so we're going to explicitly state that, and quite frankly, remove a use currently permitted by right from ever going here. So new condition number 4 would read, the use of the facility shall be limited to administrative offices and employee and student training, and offices and classrooms for employee and student training, period. It shall not be used as a facility for alternative school students. And again, that's a term of art that the school board uses for students that have maybe been expelled from other schools. With that, Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure that I've been responsive to our neighbors with that last condition. So I'll pause and reserve any time for any responses.
Okay, very good. Hi, ma'am, if you'll come down. And I honestly did not realize that you were here in opposition. I didn't have this. So we didn't do a full staff report ahead of time. Do you want us to do that, or are you comfortable with what we've talked about? Okay, you come on down.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
if I may, Kendra Cobbs, Division of Planning and Development. So this is the first that I am seeing what the applicant is contesting of the conditions. So I would actually like to request a 1-month hold on this so that I can review these conditions that have just been brought before me, the contesting of the conditions.
Okay, I'd like to hear from the duly noted, and I want to hear from our nice neighbor that's come down. So, and then we can talk about that hold. But she may you go ahead and come up. She may not want to come back next time after the hold or something like that. So if you'll give your name and address for the record. Is Ms. Ingram?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Basically, our neighbor.
Name and address first, and I'll swear you in.
Deborah
Yeah.
Ingram, 645 Alice Avenue.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Ingram.
Yes, I think the main concern was basically, there may have been something prior to, but I'm gonna say I did not see it. And I spoke with some of the other neighbors, and they didn't see anything prior to as well. But in any case, when we looked up, the building was being painted and the wrought iron was going up, and we were like, you know, what is going on here? And so basically, our primary concern was, what is going on? What is going to happen with this building? And we didn't know what was going to happen to the building. So along with that, our thought process was, if in fact, well, originally we thought that it was going to be owned by Port Elite. And so then we found out later that it was going to be used for, the rumor was, a police department. And so it was like, what is going on here? We need to know exactly what is going on with this building. I think the bottom line is, right now, our community, if you can say in Memphis, is relatively quiet, and we want to keep it that way.
Sure.
And so our primary concern was all of the schools in the community have either been demolished, so basically we have no school children, you know, no schools, no school children. So our primary concern, well, if we have no children that are on those streets, why do you bring somebody else in? You know, our kids don't get to go to school in this community, and you're gonna bring other, and I'm not sure what adjective I should put in front of element, but you said alternative element into our neighborhood. Again, for the most part, we have a lot of elderly people, a lot of retired educators, somewhat quiet for the most part, and we wanted to keep it that way. So that was my primary concern. What is going to be done with the building? Who's going to be in the building? Who's going to take care of the building? It's right directly across the street also from the fire department, and that has always caused basically some kind of concern, because they didn't want the cars parked so that the fire trucks could get out. And so with that, we just wanted to know, if there's going to be equipment in the confines of the gates, is that something for us to be concerned about? Do we have to worry about people breaking into, where at that time we thought police cars, has just been all over the place. So we needed some general information. What is going to be done with this property in our community? And more than that, we don't want the decisions made to be impactful of our relatively quiet life.
Are there any questions for Ms. Ingram?
I have a question. The change to the use that was articulated by Mr. Whitehead, does that resolve your questions about the use?
For the most part, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Because when he came over and we spoke, that was when I think Ms. Cobb gave me a wealth of information. And so, but the one thing that was not covered was, we don't want the alternative. We don't want people coming into our neighborhoods to do pickups and this kind of thing, and they have not been to our neighborhood and, you know, kind of look around. We don't want to bring any kind of attention to our neighborhood so that people will come back. And let's just put it out there, case it out, to come and start breaking in houses. And I had my car taken. So, you know, that's the reason I said relatively quiet. We want to keep it at that level and not anything more. Okay. But my question was answered.
Right. Thank you so much.
Quick question. Just out of my curiosity, at what point was the right of use not allowed for, I guess, this for schools anymore? Because this used to be Alton Elementary, right?
It was Alton Elementary.
Okay.
One, first grade through fourth grade.
Okay. So is schools and academy, are those different uses? I was looking at the.
I'll let staff answer that.
Yes, they are classified differently within our Unified Development Code.
Okay.
Okay. Perfect. All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Whitehead, would you like to come and speak to us again?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, with regard to, I think, whatever confusion there was, the school board has a department called Security and Safety. Security is the actual administration of the officers who patrol each and every school. The safety part or sub-department of that department deals with the training protocols, because as we know, unfortunately, it's a world we live in. Gun violence has increased and perhaps will continue to increase. So the safety department is solely devoted to training the security officers on the most up-to-date ways to address the security issues that occur in our schools. So I think the word safety may have been the confusion with regard to storage of police or security vehicles, et cetera. With regard to the 30-day hold, my understanding for decades has been the staff's opportunity in the staff report is to craft their conditions, make their position, and share it with the board. An applicant, where opposition's opportunity is, when the board meets, craft its conditions. And then the board decides and weighs the staff conditions, the applicant's conditions, the opposition's conditions. And if there were an opportunity for there to be consultation for all of those, I think those were missed. We were not consulted about the crafting of these conditions. We saw them when you saw them, Mr. Chairman.
Right. All right. Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. So, question, how about we get this into discussion, and during that discussion time, we can talk about if we would like to do a hold or we'd like to vote. So if we could get a motion to approve BOA 2024-34 as conditioned by staff first.
So moved.
Okay. I think without even having a motion, why don't we discuss what we think about a hold? Anybody have any offhand thoughts on that?
Well, my initial thought is, as always, I'd like to hear staff's opinion before we vote on anything, and I'd like to give them a chance to chime in, and also if we hold, maybe staff and the applicant can talk and come to some agreement before we come together again, and it makes it easier for everybody.
That's kind of where I was at first, but like the conditions aren't crazy. They're not hard to understand. Do we need the fence to have brick on it every 100 feet? Do we need to be moved back 8 feet beyond the sidewalk? There's no lights in the parking lot.
That was my thought as well. Like the added or the revised conditions, then, in my opinion, seem to be anything that you can't look at quickly and decide if you're okay with them.
Yeah.
So that's why I was kind of against the hold as well. Yeah. Impartial to a hold, just because it doesn't seem like I don't know what new information would come from the conditions, except the one that he added, which was number 4, which seems to be just in response to the.
Yeah, it's more restrictive than what we have.
You make it more restrictive, so it doesn't invite any new usage.
I think the fact that he did address the concern of opposition, Ms. Ingram, and has restricted it more than I think we would have thought to. I'm probably not for a hold. I think we can make a determination based on where we are, what's been presented.
Okay. So question would then be, with all due respect to staff requested, does anyone want to make a motion for a hold? Vote on it.
I move that we hold this application until for a month.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Y'all just want to let it out there and just see what happens. I think, okay, if you'll do a quick roll call for us, Jeffrey.
Mr. Campbell,
No.
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Ms. Bostic,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
No.
Mr. Claybrook,
No.
Ms. Scurlock,
No.
Vice Chair Savage Sullivan,
No.
and Chair Rainey.
No.
Motion fails.
So that motion fails. Would there be then, as we get further into discussion, is there a problem with substituting the conditions by staff in the motion with the conditions as proposed by the applicant, including the new number 4, dealing with no alternative school?
This is for purposes of just making the motion?
This is, could we redo our motion to include
Oh, yeah.
those? The friendly amendment to, these are our conditions we're voting on, the ones that were presented by the applicant.
Okay.
And so is there any opposition to doing that?
No.
All right, seeing none, is there any discussion on those conditions? All right, seeing none, Mr. Penzis, will you give us a roll call, please?
Madeline,
Madeline first?
and then I second it, yeah. We got a little ahead of ourselves there.
No worries. Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Ms. Bostic,